Hey guys, Horizon here, doing a little bit of a different video today. I wanted to do a deck profile for Altergeist for this format to really show that I'm an idiot and to really get that fact that hey Horizon, Altergeist can't out Dragoon. How are you going to do it? Well, it's time for me to show you guys some spicy tech that I've been begging, that I've been asking people left and right on Discord, and they keep giving me the same response, Super Poly and Kaijus, in which I want to break that mindset and really show what Altergeist can do without these dumb tech cards. So let's get it off with the firing off with the first starter. Really just the main standard monster. 3 Marionetter, 3 Meluseek, 3 Multifaker, 2 Sequidius, 1 Konkiri, and then 1 spicy tech, Finlag. I'll talk a little bit more about Finlag. Marionetters typically is your starter. You always want to see this card in your hand along with Meluseek. And also Multifaker, these are your cards that you would typically want to see either in one copies and not multiple bunches. The Garnet is Konkiri, typically you want to search that later on, and Sequidius is really just for the Multifaker special summon. So fetching a trap, fetch monsters, and fetch any of these boys from the deck. So that's a little bit of a brief explanation. Next, for the rest of the monsters, 2 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. This is typically just because it's more my competitive deck. I do play hand traps, not a lot, just the 2 Ash Blossoms. I can't afford impermanence right now. So if you do have a budget for that, I typically would say get some copies of impermanence because it does help this deck plus. And lastly, for the spicy deck, the Out Dragoon, 1 of the Awakened Possession Rizuru. I don't know really how to pronounce this guy's name. The reason why I play this is because it's more if less of a Garnet, because it can special summon itself from the deck. All you need is a level 4 lower spellcaster and a wind monster that's level 4 lower as well. So typically that's easy to accomplish because Multifaker can set you a Sequidius, who is also a wind monster. So typically what happens is you trigger a trap, Multifaker special summon Sequidius, then next turn you can just send these both to the graveyard and special summon Rizuru from the deck. And then when he's summoned, you can bounce a monster from the hand, bounce a monster to the hand, non-target. So that's going to be really help to out Dragoon. Moving on to the spell cards, we have 2 copies of Extravagance for the searching and just digging deck, along with the 1 Duality. Honestly, I'm really debating to cut the Duality for its because of the fact that it does lock you into not able to special summon. It does hurt that. It hurts it a lot because the fact that if you open like Meluseek and like this, or if you get the Meluseek off the Duality, you're not able to go to Link Karibo and get your Multifaker search. So I kind of work my deck around that, so into these priorities where I don't have to worry that often, but still this does help. The reason why I'm not playing 3 copies is because I have really bad luck in drawing the other copy. This is also why I don't play Desires in my build. I hate that card. Just because I'll typically draw another Desires off the Desires draw, and I don't like banishing 10 cards from my deck. I'm more of a grind game person. So those are spells. Those are these 3 spells, but I still play I play 6 spells. 1 1-for-1 and 2 Blizzard. For the reason of Blizzard, because of Harpy's Feather Duster coming into the format and Lightning Storm still running around, Blizzard actually does help with that because when your opponent activates a spell, you can flip this up, negate the spell, and then it returns to the hand. That is the downside. It does return to the hand, but they can't activate any card with that name for the rest of the turn. So it does give you knowledge. In Altergeist, typically you want to have the best knowledge of knowing what your opponent has in their hand every single time, so you know what to play. Control decks are really needing that knowledge for that reason. So if they have a Lightning Storm, it's better to set up a Hexia negate instead of a Protocol. If you have those options, you really want to know what your opponent has at all times. Moving on to the trap cards, we have 3 copies of Old Man Says No, along with 3 more copies of Old Man Says No. These are just typical standards in any control deck for the negates of special summons, also negate monster effects, and spell and trap effects and monster summons. Just Old Man Says No. Moving on to the more typical traps that people play, 3 Crackdown, and that's really typically the 9 staples you play. You also play another 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence if you have them. I do not because I don't own them. I used to, but I was stupid and got rid of them. So Crackdown's honestly a really good card for its ability to steal, but since this format's a little bit more non-targeting, mostly, Dragoon, I might try to cut this to 2 or even 1 copy, but honestly it would probably be cut to 2. But it's still a really good card overall. Stealing opponents' monsters until they want it back is still really good for disruption. Now for my own spicy techs, I do play 2 copies of Black Horn of Heaven, along with 2 copies of Dark Renewal. For anyone who doesn't know what Black Horn of Heaven, this is basically a watered down version of Solemn Strike. When an opponent summons a monster, and you can basically just negate the summon. So it doesn't have a spell and trap negate, but it does allow you to stop the summon of a monster. This counter trap still helps. Dark Renewal is a really good card because not a lot of people see this. It's a little bit of a conditional card. When your opponent special summons or special summons a monster while you control a spellcaster, you can flip this up, activate it, target your spellcaster, target the monsters that just was summoned, send them both to the graveyard, and then summon a dark spellcaster from the deck. Or deck and graveyard. So that honestly does help because you can just normal summon the Melee Seek, thinking you banish all your multifig, or not your multifigures, your Link Rebos, and just flip this up, steal their monster, summon a multifigure, and then you get a surge off of that from the Melee Seek. For the last traps, these are mostly the Altergeist Impartition, 2 Protocol, 3 Spoofing, and 1 Manifestation. Typically, people know what these cards do: Manifestation or Revise, Spoofing Searches, and Protocol Negates. And lastly, for the traps is 1 copy of Altergeist Elfila. I will get a little more in depth of why I play this one. It's mainly for the reason it does protect your Altergeist monsters for Altergeist cards from being targeted. Same as Elfila. Elfila, while in the field, you can't target it. You can only target it for attacks and card effect. This one is basically the same thing. You must target it to target my back row. So it does help out quite a bit, so they can't actually get rid of the protocol or other stuff. And lastly, the extra deck. I play 3 of the God, 2 of the Altergeist. Technically, I don't know what this is. Technically invoked Mirage. I just don't. This is not Solemn Grace of Word. This is bad. Alright. 3 of the Boy Who Don't Want to Be Banished. And Charmers. Surprisingly. Charmers actually do help because every single Altergeist monster is a different attribute. So it actually gives you a little bit of variety if they don't get banished off this trap. For the last monsters, you can get almost anything in. Zeobolos and 5-headed Link Dragon. I think for the spice, if you actually manage to get every single Altergeist monster, you can make 5-headed God Dragon. And then Zeobolos is just there because it's a possibility to out-Dragoon. Lastly, for the last 2 monsters of the extra deck is 2 copies of the Altergeist Tuner, or the Altergeist Synchro monster. This is actually not a bad monster. It's really there for the name, and since it's a Synchro, does help, and I will go a little bit more in depth with the combo of what Altergeist can do. And lastly, I'm going to show you a little bit of a combo that actually involves a Altergeist OTK. You wouldn't be shocked, but it still is possible. So let's say you set a 5 back row or something, and then just have the multi-figure. Lastly, your opponent goes end phase because either they couldn't play through all your negates, or they just bricked somehow. Typically, you want to do multi-figure at the end phase so that it's uninterrupted. So typically, you just flip up Elfila, special summon it. Since Elfila is special summoned as level 4 light spellcaster, and a trap was activated because it's still treated as a trap, multi-figure special summons itself. Multi-figure effect will trigger, hopefully resolves, specialing out a Melee Seek, if I can find it. Specialing out Melee Seek from the deck. So now, so with the pawns end phase, they still pass their turn. That you draw for turn. For my example, I'm just not going to draw anything because it doesn't really matter for the combo. You go standby main. You link both of these off for a Altergeist Hextia. Whatever Melissa's effect will trigger, activating its effect to search for a Altergeist monster, which you will search for Marionetter. In which case now you will normal summon Marionetter, activate its effect. It doesn't really matter what you set because it doesn't matter for the combo, but typically it's depending what you need if you fail to kill your opponent. So I'm just going to set a protocol just in case I don't kill my opponent. So with that, mind, now you activate Marionetter's effect, targeting itself, targeting multi-figure engrave, swapping places. Multi-figure effect will trigger because it's now a new turn, specialing out a certain boy that you may or may not have seen, Altergeist Finlag. Since this is a tuner at level 2 and this is a level 4 monster, you can now synchro into the Altergeist synchro, making a sync 6 spellcaster, and typically you now have game 1 war if they have open say 37, 22, and 12 being 81 damage. And with that, even if your opponent activates a trap card or a spell or trap, Hextia can negate it, which tributing off this monster, which causing its effect to be resolved, causing it when it's tributed, you can special summon it back. So if you have another trap, that you can activate, like maybe a protocol, or you technically can Hextia negate it, tribute this off, and then put another body on board again to attack. That's the first combo. For the second one, we have something a little bit different. This is for the second combo. We have just a standard Haunted Rock combo where you just go Marionetter and Multifigure. You'll normal summon the Marionetter's effect to grab Haunted Rock. Since Haunted Rock was set off Altergeist monster effect, you can activate Haunted Rock the turn it's set, pitching the Multifigure, triggering off Marionetter's effect, sending that to the graveyard, special summoning Multifigure. Multifigure effect will trigger, special summoning out anything you really need. For my case, I will be grabbing a Meluseek because I have no other cards in my hand for this combo, so link 2 into Hextia, which causing Meluseek's effect to trigger once again to grab either a Multifigure or whatever you need, so I'm just going to grab Multifigure. And then if you really wanted to, this is where people go into Link Cross, but since I'm a budget player, I will be playing, or a semi-budget player, I will be going into another Hextia, getting the first Hextia's effect to grab a Protocol. And now in which case you have 3 cards. You would typically still have 3 cards in your hand if you're going first, and typically I have Haunted Rock on my side, so it's not too bad, but if I'm doing this combo, I'm typically maining to go first. So during the opponent standby, flip Protocol, special summon this, special summoning out the Sequidius. Because you have traps in your grave, because you have like Haunted Rock Engraver, the Sequidius will actually get you something that you might possibly need. You still have a spell and trap negate, and a monster negate, and a potential bounce from any of these cards. Typically that's the complicated combos, but it's overall a lot of fun playing this deck.